Hi everyone and welcome back to Stitchy Bee. This week I'm going to be talking about the Sew Over It Chloe coat and how I'm getting along with it. Firstly, you'll probably recognise from last week I'm wearing the Susie blouse, also from Sew Over It, so I thought I'd have it on today, seeing as the weather's nice and bright here in the UK. Okay, first up then, Chloe coat progress. I'm not sure if you've come across this before, but it's an online class available from the Sew Over It website. With the online class you also get the PDF pattern which you can download and either print off at home or have it printed at a copy shop. First up, really I'd recommend that you do that. I haven't got any near me, so I printed off all 84 pages myself, and it was a lot of sticking together, so it's quite a lot of work. I took a picture of myself actually, if you want to have a peep. This is what it looked like. Because I don't have a lot of time to sit down and do all my sewing in one session or planning, I had to keep coming back to the pattern and sticking more bits together. So that's why it's a little bit messy when I was trying to hold it up, because folding it up and putting it away is not a good idea. So try and do it in one sitting if you can. And here is the toile I made. So I made this out of calico fabric. I know toiles are often referred to as muslins, so therefore it might be tempting to buy muslin to do that, but it's quite expensive, you may find. So calico's the cheapest fabric you can buy for this purpose, or better still, use something that you don't want to make into anything else, so some scrap fabric from your stash. So yeah, I cut out a size 14, which is what I usually wear. I'm probably a 13 really. Which when you make your own clothes you've got the ability to do that and to cut that particular size. So I thought I'd make it larger rather than too fitted. And when I tried this on, I found it was a little bit big, so even knowing that it's going to be lined and finished in a slightly heavier fabric, it's still going to be too big for me. So the traditional way of altering a toile is to unpick this after you've fitted it correctly and then redraw it and then cut it out. Well, because I'm a bit lazy, I didn't want to do that. So I thought, right, I'm just going to go for the size down because it was quite a bit bigger, and I thought, yeah, size down will be good. And also Lisa's really handily included a 2 centimetre seam allowance in the side seams, so you have got room later on in the process to take it in slightly. Which I thought was dead helpful. So there's room for manoeuvre when you go through. So yeah, the biggest part of this was cutting out the pattern. Once that was done and I started getting onto the fabrics, including this, it's much quicker than you think. The video itself is fantastic. Lisa goes through each stage very clearly. It's much easier than reading instructions from some of the big pattern companies where you're arguing with the instructions and you're not quite sure how it's going to turn out or what they mean by that. There's no question about what's expected of each stage, which is brilliant. So even though you might not be thinking about buying an online class, I've got so much out of this and other ones I've bought from Craftsy, which I can use for other projects. That I think it's worthwhile doing, especially for something that's tailored, where you maybe learn a few more techniques. So yeah, this was the toile, a bit too big, so I've cut out a size 12 in the fashion fabric, and here it is. Now, as you can see, I've not finished yet because I was burning the midnight oil last night, adding a few more bits to it, so it really is a work in progress still, but I'm really happy how it's turning out so far. It's so easy to start sewing once you've prepped the pieces. So in the actual pattern itself, it tells you to interface or partially interface the insides. So Lisa also gives you the option of interfacing it all. So if you've got a lighter weight fabric, then do that. But as I'm using a furnishing fabric, I mentioned before, it's from Dunelm, which is usually used to make cushions and curtains. I thought it would be fine just to interface as instructed on the original. So you've got parts here on the other inside and down at the hems, just to add a little bit more stiffness. It's really tempting to skip that, but I think for that professional finish that you'd like, especially when it's got a point here. I know from sewing my jacket it does curl slightly, and I wished I'd have discovered this technique for that. So do persevere with the extra bits that it asks you to do. It will give you a better finish. One thing I struggled with is the actual sleeve head. Now there's quite a lot of fullness in the sleeve, which Lisa explains how to get over and get around, but because I'm using such a stiff fabric, I didn't get rid of all the puckers, and to be honest, I don't mind that, because I think that it's flattering to have a slightly gathered sleeve, especially when you're as tall as I am. It does kind of bring your shoulders in slightly if there's a slight crease and puckering here, so it never bothers me to have it gathered. So I'm leaving it. I've made it as neat as I can and pressed it as neat as I can. Now also in the course, as part of the supplies list, you're asked to buy some ice wool, which is a kind of little strip of fluffy fabric. It looks like a kind of wadding from Lisa's online class video. So I didn't want to order that and wait a few more days to start my coat. So as I didn't want to buy the ice wool, I thought I'd have a bash at making my own. Now I was reading a good technique actually from Alison Smith, who's a sewing teacher who writes a column for Love Sewing magazine last week, and she just so happened to explain how to insert a little bit of padding for a sleeve head using silk organza. And her technique was something like folding it in half and then popping that into the sleeve head and sewing it so that sits inside and gives a little bit of lift and smoothness to the sleeve. So I thought that's great. It's probably not thick enough for this coat, and looking at the ice wool that Lisa demonstrated, I thought I'd have a bash at making my version. So I've taken a piece of white felt and a piece of silk organza, and I've stitched them together at one end, kind of like that. This is not the exact piece size, it's a rough guesstimate because I've used the other ones. And then I folded it over and inserted that in and used that in place of the ice wool. It's turned out okay. I just didn't fancy buying anything that I didn't have to, and I thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? So that's what I've done there. Right or wrong, that's what I've done. That's what I'll do for the next one too. So it worked for me. You can always improvise, can't you, in sewing? So there you go. That's it so far. I've got to add the front plackets to tidy this zip up, which will sit flatter when that's sewn in. And then of course there's the other placket on the side and the right hand side of the zip. And then it has to be fully lined, which is fairly simple to do looking at Lisa's instructions. So overall I'm really happy with this course. I've learnt lots, again, as you always do. And also it's been quite simple going from stage to stage. So I would recommend it if you're fancying having a bash at sewing a coat for yourself. It is classed as an introduction to sewing coats, so it's a basic starter class to sew coats, so it's worth having a go. But it can be daunting if you take it on all at once. So try and get the pattern printed out. If you can't do that, just take your time with it. You need a big floor space or a big table to do so, and then just follow the process step by step. So as I've mentioned before, I'm also making a winter one. So I've got some beautiful Melton wool in a Camel for autumn winter. I'll show you that now actually. So here's my Camel Melton wool. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's quite light. I've never come across it in sewing before. Clearly it's probably been on a few garments without me knowing the term for it. But I'm really quite pleased with how that will look. And it's a a colour that will go with everything as well. So when I've finished this one, I'm going to stitch this one up straight away, because I know me, if I don't use the pattern while it's out, I'll forget about it and it'll be in a drawer, and it'll probably be a bit dog-eared by the time I come to get it out again. So that's what my plans are for the next week. If you want to pop back then and see how I get on, hopefully I'll have finished this by next Friday. So pop back in and see how I've got on. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. It'd be lovely to hear your comments if you've had a go at this as well. I'll put all the links to everything I've mentioned in the description below. And thanks a lot for watching and subscribing. Take care, see you next week. Bye.